right, if you're already in the live stream, thanks for coming. I'm going to wait about one more minute because I said I'd start at 2, so I don't want to start early. I've been pacing around the basement because it's been a long time since I've done a live stream for the public channel, so I'm admittedly a little nervous, but we'll get through it. All right, so it looks like we're at 2 o'clock on the dot. I'll be right back. I'm going to turn the music down a little bit. Okay. All right, I think I see 1 or 2 people out there. So thanks for joining me for this live stream. Like I said, this is the first live stream I've done on the channel in many months. If you follow the channel on a regular basis, this is the first video you've seen in a couple months. So yeah, I won't get into the details of it, but I've been busy this summer. I've been doing a lot of other stuff, and now that we're getting back into the fall or close to fall and the off season, I'm finding more time to get back in the workshop, and so I'm excited to be doing this workshop session with you today. This is going to be a 2-part series. So part 1 is going to kind of go over the basics of how I select the clubs that I put into my sets. And then the first half of that process of refurbishing them, and the second half obviously is going to finish up the clubs. So while we're doing this, I'm going to have the live stream up here on my iPad with the chat. So if there are specific questions related to what I'm working on, or things that you just want to know about restoration that kind of cover the topics, or that are within the topics that we're covering today, throw a question in the live chat, and I'll try to refer back to that and see those questions as they come in. I'm going to have this kind of off to the side so I can actually do some work. So if I don't see the question right away, I apologize, but I'll try to keep tabs on that. You know, just go ahead and type in hello, because I'd like to see who's actually tuning into the stream. So go ahead and leave your name and stuff if you're comfortable doing that in the chat, just to say hello. Yeah, I think we're just going to get into it. You'll hear some music in the background. Hopefully it's not too intrusive, and hopefully it doesn't distract me. But that is Scott Kirby, and Scott Kirby is one of the, in my opinion, preeminent interpreters of Scott Joplin's music. Has recorded several albums of Scott Joplin's music, and if you follow this channel for any period of time, you know that I love Scott Joplin. I use his music a lot in the course vlog videos. So Scott Kirby gave me permission to play his Scott Joplin songs in my videos, and that's why you hear that in the background. Partly to give Scott Kirby some attention, some exposure. Not that he needs it from me, but also because that's probably the only music I could play on this live stream that wouldn't get flagged by YouTube. So if they give me a hard time about it, I can say Scott gave me permission. So that's why you're going to hear some music. Plus, you know, you're not going to want to hear me rattling on the entire time, just my voice. So, yeah, I'm going to put this off to the side here and grab my notes. Oh, we're already getting some. Okay, I got 6 people watching. That's awesome. I'll mention here that I have been doing live streams on the private or the member side of the Hickory Hacker YouTube channel. That's if you're a hacker backer. You get notifications of those through the YouTube membership and also through Patreon. And on that side of the channel, I've been going in depth, some more kind of intermediate, more advanced types of repairs and techniques, specifically related to woods. And I'm going to pick that series up again soon. So if you're interested in taking a deeper dive into some of this stuff, I encourage you to become a hacker backer so that you get those notifications and can be a part of those live streams, or at least watch those after the fact. And then, like I said, those are specifically about brassy repair, and also my Wolf long nose golf club process. I've just begun a series on the member side where I'm showing how I make those clubs. So yeah, I encourage you to do that. The links for those things will be in the description for this video, or you can just click the join button on the video, I think, or any video on my channel, then it'll take you to the YouTube channel membership portal. But yeah, excuse me, basically what I wanted to do with this series is kind of update what have become the most popular videos on my channel, which are the 6 videos of the Hickory Golf Club Restoration series that cover the basics of taking a club from an antique store to the golf course and being able to play with it. And I was really encouraged at seeing how well received those videos were when they first launched, and they've really taken off ever since. I mean, it's been almost 4 years ago that I published those. So obviously, I've learned a lot since then. I've done a couple kind of rehash or update videos where I've gone over specific things that I don't do as, the same, or I don't do at all anymore that were covered in those original videos. But I've never done kind of a definitive, comprehensive, this is everything I know about restoring a golf club back to playable condition. And that's what the intent of this two-part workshop series is going to be. And I thought it would be best for you to just be kind of looking over my shoulder as I'm doing it in real time, so that you can actually see how long the process takes for some of these things. And also, most importantly, so you can ask some questions while we're doing it, in case there's something that I don't even think of to mention. This is how I do. I've done hundreds and hundreds of clubs at this point, so there are certain things that I just gloss right over because they're not a big deal for me that may be an issue for you. One of the things that I know a lot of folks just getting into restoring golf clubs want to know about is how to find a stubborn pin. And I actually put together a video about 2 years ago now, where it's all the tips and tricks that I knew up to that point, and I was sending that free to hacker backers once you became a member. So we're going to go over some of those things in this video here. I have a new piece of technology that is literally brand new to me just a couple days ago that I am kind of intrigued to see if it works for a certain step of this process. So hopefully that'll work out and I'll be able to show you that. But let's get right into it. So I could talk all day, as many of you know, and I got to keep myself focused here. So you've got a set of clubs that you found in an antique shop. You're pretty comfortable with what the lofts look like as far as you can tell by the eye, and you like the weight of them, and you want to make them playable again. What do you do? Well, the first thing that myself and many others in this hobby will tell you is that if you intend to play any club that you find, you want to make sure you reset the head. And I know that there's some conflicting advice on that subject, and part of it kind of overlaps with those that want collectible clubs or want to see collectible clubs in as original condition as possible. And sometimes you'll find a club that you want to play that also happens to be a collectible club, and you kind of have to make the decision, do you want to change this club's characteristics to make it playable again, specifically taking the head off and repinning it and making it obviously no longer original as is condition, or do you want to keep it the way it is and set it aside and kind of it's become kind of a wall hanger, a collectible for you. Obviously, if you watch this channel, you know that I skew toward, I want to play the club. I like looking at them, but I would rather play them. I don't want to just put them on the wall and stare at them. So all of the things that I do to the club, I try to be as conscientious as possible about its legacy. I'm not trying to mangle it, obviously. I'm not trying to do anything to damage it. But I'm also, trying to make it so that I can play it comfortably. And, part of that is also maintaining its integrity. The resetting of the head is important because the shaft, what will break on the club is obviously the wooden shaft. And even if you waggle the club, and I'll show you my little trick for doing that if you're not familiar, but if you waggle the club from the head and you don't feel any, wobble with the shaft, then you could be kind of convinced that it's really tight and that you could play it fine. I would say that, I don't know what the percentage would be, but there's a good chance that you will be able to play that for a few rounds and you won't have any issues and it'll be just fine. There's also probably an equal chance that after a couple rounds of hitting the ball, you go out the third or fourth time with it, and on a particular shot where you think the club's still tight, all of a sudden it's not tight, and that vibration ends up breaking the shaft. So that's the danger of playing a club that hasn't been reset with epoxy, and that's why I always do it to the clubs that I play. I'm going to show you kind of a little shortcut with a particular product that I just became familiar with when I was at the Foxburg Pennsylvania Gutty event last month. And a guy that I play with that I like, Ross Snellings is his name. I'll just tell you right now the story here. Ross Snellings is in Augusta, Georgia, and he's come up with a proprietary substance that he calls Hazeltite. And it's basically a very, what's the scientific term? It's very fast flowing. That's not the scientific term. But it's a very fast flowing glue that you basically seep into the hazel, and it'll, over time, you do a few sessions of this, it'll eventually make that wobble disappear and will basically make the club playable and tight. That is a process that I would recommend probably for a Gutty era club, which even I don't like to take heads off of Gutty clubs because those pins are sometimes impossible to find. And also, you know, I want to maintain some of the collectability of that club in certain cases. So I could see that this Hazeltite would be the ideal for that. And as we go through this process today, which is basically going to be removing the head and getting some rust removal going, I'll kind of touch on the certain steps of the process where I would say, like, you don't need to do this if you're going to do that. So if that makes any sense. But yeah, basically, you want to reset the head. That's kind of the biggest thing you want to do first. And so understanding that, my next part of the process is kind of, you know, putting together the clubs in a way that makes the most sense. And mind you, I'm coming from the perspective of I'm building beginner sets for, you know, for people that are new to hickory golf. And one of the most important things that I found when I was starting out was that the clubs that you end up finding in antique stores and thinking that are going to be good players end up being terrible players because they lack weight. You know, a lot of times you're going to come across clubs that are too short, or clubs that just never that heavy in the first place, or they're ladies clubs and you don't even realize you're playing a ladies club, which was the case for me. But in all those instances, the swing weight of the club is so low that you have erratic swings with it. And while you might think that it's the club, or you might think it's your swing, getting used to a hickory shaft or whatever, a lot of times it's usually because you can't feel the weight of the club through your swing, and you're over swinging and you're just not making good sweet spot contact consistently. So one of the big things that I realized for myself and that I've translated into the beginner sets that I make for other people is making sure that the swing weight of the club is what I would consider to be a good play weight. And by that I mean basically C7 or higher. Standard golf clubs for men usually are D2, D1. So if you can get into that range, that's fantastic, because then you've got basically the same swing weight from your modern set to your hickory set, even though the hickory clubs are going to be overall heavier, because they just are. But the swing weight, your ability to sense the club head through the swing, will be just as if you're playing your modern set. So that's always my goal when I'm putting a beginner set together. And a lot of times when I'm finding clubs in the wild, if I just waggle it and just kind of give it a couple little, you know, chip type swings in the antique store without knocking over a lamp, then I can pretty much determine that this club is close or, you know, spot on to the swing weight that I'm looking for. And I've gotten away now from buying clubs that I think are going to be too light. The one exception to that is if I can tell that it's definitely a head on a shorter shaft than it should be. And a lot of cases, what would happen in the 30s and 40s would be that, you know, Dad would take his clubs, his son wanted to start playing golf, and he would cut down his hickory shafts by a ½ inch or an inch so that they suited the son. And what you'd end up doing is making a club that's way lighter than it should be, but, you know, probably suited the son well. But then that club gets into circulation, and you find it in an antique store 75 years later, 100 years later, and you think that it was made that way and it was just light to start with. But really all it was you were missing an inch of that shaft. And if you got an extra inch back or a ½ inch, you'd get it back into a playable swing weight. So if I see a club that looks like that's the case, then I'll look at it a little bit closer and I'll say, yeah, I think I can put a different shaft in this head and make it playable. Obviously, that's all just kind of me doing some guesstimating on the scene. It's not till I get back into the workshop that I really start messing around with swing weight and finding out what the specific loft is, finding out what the specific swing weight is, and then figuring out where I need to go from there. So what I have here today are 5 clubs that I'm working on for a beginner set, and these are right off the bat really good swing weight. So I'll just kind of run through them real quick. Let's see here. Need a third hand. All right. So what I like to do, and I'm missing a club here. I don't know where the fifth club went. Well, we'll figure that out when I move. Oh, it's right here. Sorry. Okay. This brings up the other thing I wanted to mention when I'm building a set. So we talked about swing weight. I try to make sure that the swing weight's going to be in the right range, and I'll show you when we get into taking the heads off how I dial that in a little bit more specifically. But then we go to lofts, and so for my beginner sets, I figure a 10-degree loft gap is good because what it does is it encourages you to play the hickory game. What I mean by that is if you've got lofts set up like your modern bag is, then you're going to play the game the same way that you do with your modern clubs, which is, especially when you're within like 125 yards of the green, you're going to be looking for all those instances to just pop the ball up and get it onto the green. Well, what I try to encourage beginners is a lot of the, pretty much in my opinion, a good chunk of the fun of playing hickory golf is learning how to play a golf course completely different than you do with your modern set. And specifically, it's using the ground to your advantage, especially when you're getting closer to the green. So that's why us hickory golfers aren't huge fans of forced carries into greens, because we don't get to run the ball up then. But if you start to look at the terrain that's leading into the green, especially in a Golden Age era course, you'll find plenty of opportunities to basically use a bump and run and do other kinds of shots, creative shots, with the few clubs you have in your bag, instead of always going to that one wedge that's a 54-degree gap wedge that you're going to just pop it up and onto the green. So when I'm building these sets with a 10-degree loft difference, except for an exception I'll talk about in a second, I'm basically trying to encourage the player to figure out how to manufacture multiple shots with just a couple clubs, which in my opinion is the essence of the hickory game that you don't get to experience anymore with your modern set unless you consciously try to play that way. So that means that I usually start out my mid iron, which is the longest iron, at about 25 degrees. Obviously it depends on what the loft of the clubs that you have are, so that can range from 20 to 25 degrees, something like that. But what I'm trying to do there is find a long iron that I think is going to be a good swing weight for someone to use, not just for long approaches, but for off the tee. While I sell brassies independent of my iron sets, I build the iron sets so that you can play hickory golf without any trouble without a brassie. So you tee off with your mid iron. In a lot of cases, if you're really not a great golfer like me, the iron actually becomes a more consistent club for you off the tee than the brassie would be. The brassie's got a tiny sweet spot compared to what people are used to in a modern club, so it's definitely less forgiving. And if you're just trying to get off the tee and get yourself into the fairway, even if it's only 150 yards out, I definitely recommend going with the mid iron off the tee. So that's why I start with the mid iron at about 25 degrees. If I got something less than that, okay, that's fine. I'll work with that. But then from there, I want to get to about 35 degrees for the mashie, which is, in my opinion, the most versatile club in your bag and the one that you'll use the most. You can use it for approach shots. You can use it for bump and runs. You can use it for chips. You could kind of, putt with it if you needed to off the green, which I guess is sort of a bump and run chip, whatever. But point is, it's a club that you could probably use if you wanted to play around a hickory golf and somebody stole most of your clubs and all that was left was your mashie and your putter, you'd probably be fine. So that means that I go from 25-degree mid iron to about 35-degree mashie. Then, if I'm just building a set, like a 4-club set, for somebody who just wants to get their feet wet with hickory, but doesn't know what they want out of their clubs and doesn't want to spend a lot of money, the 4-club sets that I build are very nice, in my opinion, because they go 25, 35, 45, then putter. So the 45-degree club that I use for those sets is usually kind of a hybrid mashie niblick. So I'll try to find something with that 45-degree loft that maybe has a little bit more of a wider sole on it, so that if you wanted to try to open it up a little bit, you could. But it's not the 50-degree niblick or the conventional niblick that a lot of people find in hickory sets that's got a very thin sole on it that digs in American turf more times than not. So that to me, I think, is kind of the ideal set, because it's 3 clubs, 3 irons plus a putter, and yeah, you really can't get into hickory golf any easier than that, in my opinion. But if somebody is a better golfer and they do want to have something that's higher lofted because they're comfortable getting out of the sand with a club that's 50 degrees or higher, then I build the set with a 45-degree Mashie niblick and then a 50-degree or higher niblick for that purpose. So this particular set is going to have a 45-degree Mashie niblick, and then this niblick is 50 degrees. So now we'll get into the swing weights real quick here. So we've got a 26-degree Mashie, I'm sorry, 26-degree mid-iron at D1. We'll talk about length in a second too. That's going to be something else for when we take the heads off. 36-degree Mashie D1, 45-degree Mashie niblick E1. That's pretty heavy. And you could, if I wanted to, I could kind of stop the set right here, because one of the things that I like about these heavier Mashie niblicks is that it certainly works as a niblick, more so than a Mashie niblick in this case. This will be an interesting club once I get it refurbished, because I want to see really, the more I kind of handle it, if it does make sense to turn this into a 4-club set and take this niblick out and put it into a different set. Because now that I look at that, E1, you get everything out of 2 clubs with 1 club there. You know, being able to get out of the rough because of its weight. And if you're not too thrown off by the heavier swing weight, you can put a full swing on a ball with that club as well. So these clubs, you know, I really can't ask for much better setup out of the box. Obviously, these all came from different sources, and they were just laying on my rack, and I had to work through them one day to figure out that they all kind of belong together. But that's basically the logic that I use to build these clubs. I'm at the point now where all the clubs basically that I have already are at the swing weight that I want. So now it's just a matter of mixing and matching the different loft combinations. And so that's why these are going to be put together. And these are going to be the set that we take through from what I'm calling flea to green, flea market to green, through the whole process. And I think at that point, see, I'm referring to my notes here. Yeah, I guess I'm going to move the camera over to the bench now so that you can get a closer look at some of the specific steps of the process. And we will talk about length, and then also what I think a lot of people are looking forward to, which is removing the pin. All right, so I'm going to position you guys right there. You can see the ruler. All right, I'm going to check the, okay. Before I get to the bench, I'm going to look at the chat here real quick. All right, so Brian Fritz says, hearing you loud and clear out of Todd Ridge Golf Course in Greensburg, PA. Okay, awesome. Thanks, Brian. Oh, wow, Stein Hodel from Norway. That's awesome. Hello. And then Nick from Arizona. Good afternoon to you. Have a nice stream. Thanks, Nick. Okay. So as we go along, if you got any questions about anything, drop it in the chat, and I'll try to refer to that occasionally and see what I can try to answer. So let's go to, I mentioned the loft and the swing weight, but let's talk about the length, because this is where you're really going to, this is going to affect what kind of shaft you want to keep in this or put in it. So we'll start with the mid-iron here. 26 degrees. See, okay, yeah, you can see it's 38¼ inches. That's actually ideal for this loft. So this is kind of, I don't know if this is my theory necessarily, but this is my experience with working on clubs. I've kind of determined that there are certain play lengths that correspond with ideal swing weights. Now, of course, it's not 100%, and there's variance that you come across, but generally speaking, the numbers that I'm about to give you are what I go by to get a ballpark of, you know, C8, C9 to D2, D3. It's like kind of like this sweet spot that I've determined. And so what I mean by that is when I'm measuring a club, and this is not just me, this is how you measure a club. I measure from the butt end to the sweet spot. So there's a more particular way to do this, but I kind of eyeball it and I just kind of say, all right, here's the sweet spot of the club. I go down to my ruler and I'm at, you're not seeing any of that, sorry. And here's the sweet spot. I come down 38 1/4. That's how I determine what the play length of a club is. By my experience, I've determined that if I have a 25-degree club, then I want a play length of 38.5 to 38 1/4 inches in order to have D1 or around, you know, that sweet spot of D1, D2. And as you can see right there, D1. So this club cooperated. All of these clubs basically cooperated. And I'll just run through this list real quick. I'll actually put it on the screen if you want to screenshot it. But if you've got a 30-degree club, I've determined that's a 38-inch play length. 35 degrees is 37 3/4 inch. 40 degrees is 37.5 inches. 45, 37 1/4. And you could see how this is basically going down in 1/4 inch increments. Then you get to 50 degrees, and that's where it changes. 37 degrees or less, or 37 inches or less, because niblicks are all over the place. And because they're a heavier head, sometimes you want it to be a shorter shaft so that it's not as unwieldy. But basically from 25 to 50, those figures correspond pretty well to finding a club that's going to be about D0, D1, D2 swing weight. So that's my target for all of these. We'll go through this real quick and I'll see where else we might be a little off. This is the 36-degree mashie, and I'm estimating that at 37, 37 1/4. It's D1 right now. That's actually about, let's see. Yeah, that's about a 1/2 inch shorter than what I would normally want for length on a mashie, but it's already D1. So the question is, do I want to go through the trouble of extending this by 1/2 inch just to get what would be 3 more swing weight points? And for the sake of this video, the answer is yes. I'm actually going to do that because I want to show you how you would extend this by just a 1/2 inch the proper way by doing a splice extension on the end of the shaft. But basically, that'll be part 2 of this series where I get into that. But if you wanted to keep it where it was, D1, that's a completely acceptable swing weight, and it's fine the way it is. So there's that one checks out fine. The mashie niblick, 45 degrees. And this one's coming in at 37.5. So that's actually, we would expect this to be, 37 3/4 is longer than it should be for that loft. And that explains why we're at E1 with swing weight here. So if we took the shaft down to its proper length, which would be taking a 1/2 inch off of it, we would lose 3 swing weight points and we'd be down to D7. So I'm actually going to keep this one the way it is, though, because like I said, I think this is going to end up being a 4-club set, and I want the mashie niblick to have a little bit more weight, at least right now. I may change my mind when we get to the point of actually doing something about that. But there's that. Finally, niblick, 50 degrees. This one's coming in at about 36 inches, and it is currently D2. Well, I say 36 1/4. Let's check that again. All right, yeah, I was right the first time, 36 1/4. So D2, I'm not doing anything about the length on this. I'm keeping it the way it is. And again, this club may not end up in this set at the end of the day. The putter's the exception to swing weight. I can rarely find hickory putters that have any substantial swing weight to them. So this one's 33 3/4 inch length, which makes it pretty short. I could potentially put this on another shaft, and I would probably get that into the low to mid C's if I did that, but I don't know. I'm probably not going to do it. I'll probably leave it the way it is. And I have a bunch of other putters, so if somebody sees this when they're looking at the set and they're like, I absolutely hate that putter, do you have anything else? I've got a lot of other ones you can take a look at. So before I go further, I don't want to forget one of the big things I wanted to mention in this video, which is if you go to my web store at hickoryhacker.com, I already have 2 beginner sets finished and ready to be played and ready to be sold, a 5-club set and a 4-club set. So make sure you check out the new clubs that are in the store, and you're going to be watching me put more of these clubs in the store through this process. Okay, so that covers the length. Now, let's talk about pin removal. What I have in this set is actually a pretty nice array of different pin situations. First, we've got the obvious pin. Maybe not so obvious, but you can see that. There's the pin. This one's rusted a little bit different than the rest of the head, so it stands out a little bit better. I've made a Sharpie mark there. That's one of the things that I'll do. Let's just go through this process. So when I get a club that I know I want to take the pin out of, I take a Sharpie and I just kind of look at it by eye. Obviously, this one's easy to see, but I put a mark on that side of it in case that's the side I want to try to hammer it out. Sorry, I'll put that back on the screen. So yeah, this one was easy. The putter, I already know, is easy, but may pose for us an interesting problem that I want to show you, hopefully. I hope, this is the thing, like I want there to be problems with this so that I can try to tackle them, and hopefully they're problems that you run into. I'll just tell you about this pin right now. I have a pretty good feeling that that's an aluminum pin. And I could tell because it's just a little bit of a duller color than the rest of the steel head here. I hate aluminum pins. I think they're the worst. They're very easy to cut and very easy to use for repinning. But when you want to hammer that out, if it does what I hope it'll do, so that I can demonstrate this, the pin will just kind of crush that, or the pin punch that we're using, a 1/8 inch pin punch, will crush that pin, and it'll be really difficult to push out because it's gonna crush the pin before it actually puts the weight into the pin to push it out. I've had so many instances where I have to take a drill bit to drill this kind of pin out. Now that I've said all that, watch it work really well, and it's easy. But that's why I do not use aluminum pins, because yeah, while they're easy to use on the repair end of putting them into the head, if you're on the other end of that club's history and you're like, okay, I got to take this head off, you got to deal with a pin that's just not going to take the blow from the pin punch the way that brass does. So this is brass. This is what I use. I like it because you can see it easily on a club head. And remember, I'm doing all this stuff to play the club, which means that if I have to change a shaft, I don't want to be searching around the hosel for a pin that I made invisible just because I wanted it to be more aesthetically pleasing. I want to be able to see that pin right away. So that's why I use brass. But I just wanted to mention that, and I'm hopefully, like I said, that example will pan out how I hope it will. Okay, I'll just show you this other club real quick. I think, whoops. Yeah, that pin's really easy to see, so that's not going to be a hard time. There you go. So that one's good. Now, this one. I spent all morning trying to find this pin, and I can't tell you for sure I know where it is. So this is going to be a good example for us because, yeah, I have a couple tips that I'm going to try to use to find it, and I've already kind of messed around with this, so I'm hopeful that I've got a pretty good idea of where it is. But we're going to find out when I actually get into it. First, I'll show you this other club. This club was in the same situation as the one I just showed you. It's a Majestic. They're both Majestic. So the Majestic Mid-Iron here and Majestic Mashie. Nice common clubs, great swing weight. I think these are going to be really cool players. But anyway, this one was a little bit easier to find, and so I already removed it because one of the tips that I want to show you that works sometimes, not all the time, sometimes you can take a club by the same maker and just kind of put it over the one that you're trying to find the pin. And I'll show you this when I'm on the bench here, but what I do is put a smaller pin punch through that, just kind of make a little tap so that I can make a mark on this side of the head that I'm trying to find the pin on. And sometimes it'll line up. In this case, I don't think it did, because I think what I see is the pin, that's actually on this side, what I see is the pin is up higher than on this one. So I don't think it worked in this instance, but I have had some Stewart clubs that it did work. I don't know if if I can say this accurately, but it seems like maybe if it was a better maker of a club like Tom Stewart, there was more consistency between the heads. So it was a little bit easier to make, do that little trick that I showed you. But anyway, let's just, I think I saw a message come through. So This is a good question. Got any tips for getting wood out of a hosel of a club that broke right at the hosel? Funny you should ask that. I actually, when we get over to the rust stage, the rust removal stage, one of the heads that's in the bucket of vinegar right now is a situation just like that, and I'll touch on that when I get to it. Thanks for that question. Okay, so let's just say, well, let's just do this. We need to figure out where this pin is. Now, what I usually tell people, and I've had people email me and say, there's no way there's a pin there. Hold on, I'm going to move this back just a little bit so you can actually see something other than my hands here. I don't know if this will work. I'm looking at the live stream to see if I'm actually in the picture. Hold on a second. Let's see if I actually show up here. Yeah, you can't see my head yet. Okay, sorry. This is hard because there's a delay, so I'm seeing what I'm doing on the screen like 30 seconds after. Not that long. Okay. All right, I'm going to scoot down here just a little bit. Okay, so what I'll tell people when they reach out to me is like, I've looked all over this head. There's no pin here. Have you ever run into a club where there's no pin? And the answer to that question is no. Every club's got a pin. But obviously some of them are a lot harder than others to find. So what I'll tell people to do first is take a loop. This is a cheap plastic jeweler's loop that I picked up off of Amazon. And basically I'll take the loop and I'll look at it through both sides. I'll just try to mess around, see what side can, get closer, more focused. And I'll walk around the house. I'll just literally walk around with the club with the intention being I'm trying to find different light, because what will often happen is that the seam that you're looking for on the pin will pop out in low light. If you take this outside and it's dusk and you're just walking around and you don't have the glare of your shop lights constantly hitting the hosel like is happening right now, just different light can bring out different characteristics of the metal that might help you recognize the seam quicker and easier. So that's the first thing that I recommend people do. That can take a while. It may not happen the day that you start. Your eyes might get tired of looking through the loop, and they do often for me, so I just have to set it aside and come back tomorrow and see if I can find it that way. And fresh eyes often will bring it out. You just keep, it's a patient process, and you just keep checking it in different light to see if you can see any seam. So I did that with this club and I didn't see anything. So for the sake of the video, I had to expedite the process a little bit. So the next step would be a little bit more, I don't know if it's more aggressive because you're hitting something, but I have a rawhide hammer here, or mallet. This is what I use to knock the heads off of the shaft when the pin is out. What you could do, and what I have done, is just, I don't know if that even showed up. Yeah, I think it did. Okay, hold on. I think I'm back. I don't know. Okay. Sorry, folks. I don't know how I lost you there. I'm not going to mess around with the phone too much because obviously I caused an issue there. All right. So trying to get back on screen here. Okay. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Hitting the club with the mallet. So what you're trying to do is basically just create a little bit of vibration. And so I got a little bit aggressive and I said, all right, I think I know where the pin is. And I used the punch to try to, get the pin out, and that wasn't the spot. What happened, in addition to the damage to the hosel where the pin isn't, I was also able to kind of vibrate enough of the hosel so that where the pin actually was popped up a little bit. So it sucked that I damaged the club, but it was the benefit of that was it did end up revealing where the pin actually is. Obviously, you don't want to do that if you can avoid that. That's not the right way to go about taking a pin out. Sometimes it just happens that way, and you're like, okay, well, I'll have to try to fix that. And I'll show you a technique when we get into part 2 of how I kind of fix that a little bit when I do that. But in this instance, the other thing you can do as far as hitting the club is take a board, put this flat on your bench, take a, I don't have it right at hand, but you take a board, a small board right there, hit the board, and the same kind of idea with hitting it with the mallet. Maybe you'll be able to vibrate the pin enough to kind of pop up a little bit. I got to be honest that hasn't worked for me at all. You know, I know that it does for certain people, but I may not be doing it right. That's another way you can do it. Some people use heat. You take a heat gun and you just heat up the hosel area where you think the pin may be. And your goal with that is to heat it enough so that the color of the pin is different than the color of the rest of the hosel and reveals itself that way. I've never gone to that length of doing it. I actually should try that at some point. Because I guess I always figure it out before I've run out of options, and I've never tried the heat option. But that is another way that people do it. One thing, and I can't speak to this directly, so I don't know if I'll get the details of it right, but apparently there's a solution that you can put on metal that discolors certain kinds of metal, makes it different than others. That might reveal the pin. Never tried that method. Just going through my head to make sure there isn't something else that I'm not thinking of. If you guys have any tips, you know, any ways that have worked for you, feel free to put them in the chat so other people can read that. But I think that kind of exhausts the most of the ways that I'm aware of. Because at the end of the day, really, what'll happen is I'll want to try to remove the pin the safest and easiest way, cleanest way possible, which means that I just set it aside and come back to it a different day. And usually after a couple of repetitions of that process, I end up finding it and everything's fine. Or I'm pretty sure I found it and I damaged the hosel and it reveals the pin that way, and then we're good to go. I just have to repair the hosel a little bit when it gets to the finishing stage. But in this case, I'm pretty sure that I found it. Now, this is where the technology comes in. I don't know if this is something that I'm fully going to recommend. However, I think it's kind of fun. What you see on the left there is a microscope. It's a Wi-Fi microscope, and it's hooked up to this iPad. And let's see if we can make this work properly. Don't remember my code, everyone. Okay. Okay, yeah, it should be on. All right, so it's on right now. It's got an LED in it. I'm not going to pick it up right now because I don't want to mess up where it's actually at. But it's got an LED light that you can turn up or down. Right now, I've kind of got it focused in so that it can show up about as clear as I can get it. It was $30, so you're not getting like, you're not getting you know, a really high quality piece of machinery here. But I think if you wanted to go this route, it could work. All right, so I've already made a Sharpie mark. First, let's start down here so you can kind of get your bearings here. This is the shaft. There's where it meets the hosel. Now we're on the club. There's the nicking around the hosel. We're just kind of working our way toward where I put a Sharpie mark, and I'm pretty confident that's where the pin is. And part of this that's tricky is getting used to the orientation of the head while you're moving it around on the microscope. And of course, now I'm not going to see. Is that my mark? No. All right. Bear with me, folks. Obviously, this went way better off camera. I'm trying to do everything opposite of what. I feel like I went too far now. Well, anyway, you can see the microscope gets you really close to the metal. Well, I'm going to pick this up real quick and see if I can. I hope I didn't handle this so much that I ended up rubbing off the Sharpie mark. That would be a problem. Well, I may have ruined my own example here. No, I think this is it. Yeah. Wow. Okay, good. Yeah, that's the mark. This black, when I get my finger here, this black mark is the Sharpie. And if you look really close, let me center it. Oh, of course, I'm going to lose it. There we go. All right. If you look really close, I'll zoom you in here. All right. That's my Sharpie mark right here. You see this? That is a little too clean and perfect of a crease in the hosel to match all of these other serrations and stuff. And I'm pretty sure that's where the pin is. So I think the benefit of this microscope might be after you've done all of the using your own eyes type stuff to figure out where you think the pin may be, make a Sharpie mark on that spot, and you can throw it under this microscope and see if you can see that seam. That is, in certain instances, it's going to be hard to see that seam with your own eyes or with the loop. I mean, you might be able to pick it up with the loop, but I saw enough of kind of when I was looking through the loop, I saw what seemed to be a circle, you know, in a perfect circle. Like I said, it can blend in really well if there's a bunch of other, you know, scuff marks on the hosel. But if your eyes just kind of adjust in a certain way, or you look at it a little differently under different light, all of a sudden that perfect circle kind of pops out. And that's what happened with this. So I made the Sharpie mark, put it under the microscope, and you can sort of see, like I said, right here, what appears to be a perfect circle. So that's where we're going to hit with the pin punch, and we're going to hope that that worked. So I'm going to move you back over here. In fact, I might try to put you guys above the bench at this point without turning the live stream off. Let's see if I can do that. Zoom you out. Whoops. Hold on. Shoot. Well, somebody's asking something here real quick. Nope. I think I just activated the chat on my phone. Sorry, folks. Let me take this down real quick. And yeah, I want to zoom out so you can see more here. So hopefully you'll be able to see enough and I won't get in the way. Okay. We're going to see if this microscope is correct. Move this stuff out of the way at this point. Oh, by the way, I'll show you this real quick. This is Ross Snelling's Hazeltite. If you're interested in trying this, send me an email and I'll connect you with Ross. He doesn't sell this stuff yet, but I think he would be willing to sell to individuals that want it. So that's this. So I'm going to move this off to the side. Make sure. You've seen me, if you've watched the channel at all, you know how my setup, or what my setup is, but I'll just kind of run through it real quick. I like to have this mat. This is a mat that I picked up. It's basically a floor mat from Harbor Freight. And it's nice to be able to bang on your bench. So I recommend getting one of these and cutting it to size. And then for pin punches for this, the ones that I use the most, this is the one that I use to start it. This is a 1/8 pin punch, and so is this, but it's longer, so it goes all the way through the hosel. And then if I have a kind of a finicky one, this is a thinner diameter pin punch that if it's really stubborn and I just can't get the other one through the cone all the way, this one helps out with that. So I kind of keep that off to the side. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and hope that we're on the right spot. Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to zoom in so that you can see more. See closer here. I like the instantaneousness, or the instant communication of a live stream, but it definitely, when you're trying to do a project and show detail, it's not as easy. That's all right. I won't complain though. I'm enjoying this. I hope you guys are too. Okay. You can't see it probably, but there's my Sharpie mark. Let's hope we're in the right spot. So I do that just a couple taps first to see if I'm in the right spot. because usually if you just bang it a couple times, the pin will start to move. I'm using the loop right now to look. Ooh. It's not looking good, folks. Oh, wait. No, okay. So I'm looking through the loop on the other side of the hosel, and I'm pretty sure that's the same spot on the other side. I'm not sure that's showing up, but I can see the pin kind of popping up. Oh, if you wonder why my thumbnail is this long, and I play guitar, so just to dispel any rumors about my off-camera habits. Okay, so I'm going to continue on this spot because I'm pretty sure that's the right spot. Wow. That is stubborn. So now I'm thinking, sorry, I'm going to do a little bit of looking here on my own. Trying to find that spot where I felt the pin on the other side. Okay. What I'm going to do right now, and I'm glad this is happening, I'm going to make a new mark on the other side of the hosel, because I definitely see what appears to be the pin protruding on this side. Just double checking to make sure that I put my mark in the right spot. And I didn't. Gotta go up a little bit more. This is where a third hand would really be helpful. Okay. All right, so now I know that that Sharpie mark is on the pin. I'm gonna make a third one just to make sure. I've just marred so many hosels in my day that if I can avoid doing one, marring another one on camera, that would be ideal. Okay, so yeah, I think that's the right spot. I don't think it's showing up on the camera, but this is where I'm on the side that we started, and I'm not seeing anything happening to what I hope is the pin right here, but on the other side, in pretty much the same location, it's protruding a little bit. So what you could do at this point is, I mean, I can even feel it there. What you can do is go to the other side and attack that side of the hosel, now that you can see the pin better there, and then push it through the other way. So let's go ahead and do that. Because I'm not sure why I'm not seeing it do anything on the other side. Okay, I'm just going to show you this real quick. Here's where I'm working on this side, and you can start, I don't know if the pin crease is showing up here at all, but I can see the pin now on this side. And I need to move my next punch over just a little bit. So, yeah, definitely there. I'd also recommend wearing gloves when you do this. I bang my fingers so many times with the hammer sometimes that, yeah, I don't know why I'm not wearing them right now, but the reason, and it's not because I'm a bad hammerer, it's because you've got an awkward position. This pin is obviously not straight up here. You have to come at it from the side, which means that everything kind of slips. All right. So, yeah, you guys got all knocked askew when I did that. There we go. So we're making progress there. So at this point, I pull my this guy up. Now I'm going to zoom out a little bit now. Just making sure you're still on the screen. At this point, I can put it in the cradle and use my other 1/8 inch pin punch and finish driving it through the hosel. There we go. There's our pin. Our head is no longer attached by the pin. However, it may be still tight to the hosel. So what do you do about that? Well, a couple things. First thing I would do, and I'm not going to do it quite yet because I want to go through all the steps, but first thing I'll do is I take the rawhide mallet and I'll bang on it this way, see if it comes off that way. If it doesn't come off at all and it doesn't budge, and you can tell that it didn't budge because you're looking at the pinhole and you can still see a perfect, perfectly through it, then you've got a very well attached head. And you might be asking yourself, why did I go through the trouble of trying to take this head off if it's that tight? I would still say that it's a good practice, because you never know when you start playing with the club if you're going to create vibrations that eventually loosen that head and you don't realize it, and then all of a sudden your shaft breaks. So what I would do if this was still tight, even after several rounds of banging it with the rawhide hammer, is I'd grab my heat gun right here and start on a low setting and just basically heat up the hosel where the pin is. And I don't like to heat the wood because you can easily char this. So I try to keep the heat focused in this area, try to get it over into this spot, but basically just rotate the club like this in my hand with the heat gun. And after about maybe 25-30 seconds, go back to the mallet, bang it, see if that works. If it doesn't budge, repeat. Just keep doing it until you eventually get it off. And 100% of the time, it comes off for me doing that. It may take a few rounds, but it does. So let's see if we have to do any of that. Nope. So yeah, the other thing you might want to do there is maybe do that over the padding on your floor so that when you bang it, it just bounces onto the floor and not all over your bench. But there we go. So our club head is off, and we can move on to the next step. Actually, we can't. We have to take the pins off the other heads. All right, let me grab those. I'll tell you what, I'm glad that we decided to do this in 2 sessions, because I'm already at the 1 hour mark, and I'm just barely getting pins out. I think what we'll do for the sake of the video here is, those other pins were easy to see. I want to attack this one, which I am hoping is aluminum. And I'm hoping will not cooperate, so I can show you why I hate it so much. Let's see what happens. All right, I'm just going to go straight to it with my, can you see that? I'm going to go straight at it. Yep, it's doing it. Okay, so you can clearly see that is the pin. But the pin punch is just getting absorbed into the metal there. It's just sinking right in, and it's not going to budge it. So I'm going to keep working at it, but pretty soon I'm going to have to take the drill and drill that out. Look at that. That's terrible. It basically just mushrooms it out and doesn't even budge it. This is why you shouldn't use aluminum pins. Okay. I think at this point, I mean, it doesn't do me any good to keep working on that. Do you guys want to see me try to drill that out right now? I wasn't planning on this being part of the process. Well, I guess I should have, because I was hoping it wouldn't cooperate. All right. Well, here, let me put you back on the tripod. I'll show you how I do this. Honestly, I'm going to get a drink of water here. This is one of my least favorite things that can happen. And again, I can't underscore enough how much I dislike aluminum pins. Okay, I got to grab the drill real quick. I got to figure out where I put it. Oh, good. It's actually nearby. Okay, what I'm doing right now is grabbing an 1/8 inch drill bit. So same size as my pin punch. Just looking through here to make sure I get the right one. Yeah, I guess that'll work. Okay. So let's see how I want to do this. I want to drill into the table. I think we'll go over to the vise here. you guys don't get motion sick me moving this around. Okay, I'm going to secure it with a little jig that I made. I'll show that to you. So this is maple, and it's just 2 little notches cut that I can put around the shaft. So this is how I can secure it in a vise. And that's what I'm going to do right here, so that I can secure this while I try to drill out the pinhole. It's kind of awkward getting it in there. There we go. Okay, make sure you guys can see this. Not going to be a whole lot to see other than me just drilling through aluminum. I've already kind of started it because I tried to, you know, I was able to make an indentation with the pin punch. I'll say this too before I get too far into it. I'm trying to make sure that I stay as vertical on top of the pin as possible, because I don't want to, you know, go askew and then accidentally drill into the other side of the hosel. And there we go. I'm through. So, yeah, good. Showed up. Got a little bit of a, yeah, I came in out of the other side a little too close there, so took a little bit of the wall width. That's, you know, obviously you're trying to avoid having to do any of this, but there was no other way you're going to get that pin out. Well, that actually might just be part of the aluminum. Hold on, let's see. Yeah, I don't think I damaged the other side of the hosel. Maybe just a tiny bit right there. But you can see the pin's gone. We'll go back over here now, see if we can knock off the head. Looks like we're going to have a heat gun candidate here too. Well, you guys are getting the whole suite of problems, which is great. This is what I wanted. Keeping me on my toes, and it's showing you things that could happen to you. All right. So I already described this process. I'm just going to do it now. My guess is that this head was reset at some point and reinstalled with a aluminum pin. I find it hard to believe that someone would have used epoxy, but it's possible. This isn't that great of a putter. I mean, it's Texaco is kind of a, you know, a little bit more of a collectible common, but not that collectible. So at any rate, someone may have been using this as a favorite player and ended up resetting it. I will say that as far as the head resetting process goes, it's, in my opinion, not necessary to reset a putter with epoxy. There are some things you can do to make a tight fit without epoxy. And when it comes to a putter, you're not putting any kind of stress on it to the point where the head could fly off, because you're just putting with it. That's if you really want to cut corners. I mean, I go ahead and epoxy it because I've got the epoxy out for the rest of the clubs, and I just go ahead and do it all. But yeah, that was probably a little bit more than 30 seconds. Let's see if that was enough. Nope. So we do it again. I probably should have put gloves on at this point, because if you inadvertently grab the head after you've heated it up a few times, you're going to find out pretty quick that it's hot. Notice, though, that I'm trying to stay away from the wood. I don't want to char it. I'm just trying to heat up the connection underneath the hosel with the cone. My guess is we're not going to find epoxy under here, but we're going to find a very nice, like a bit of whipping thread. That was kind of a technique they used. Sorry, I'm using my phone, so I had to cancel the call that was coming in. So yeah, I mean the technique they would have used back in the day could have involved pine tar, like a combination of pine tar and maybe some whipping thread just to kind of give it a friction fit. And that's still something you could do again with the putter today. There we go. I'll just show you what happens on the other side of the hosel there when you heat it up. It's a nice fragrant hickory char smell right now. You can still see there's some remnants of the pin in there, and now that the head is off, it's pretty easy for us to clean up. Just take the pin punch. Make sure you don't touch the head. Yeah, some of that. Just have to take it off when we get to that point. But there you go. So that's how you deal with that. I got to put a glove on real quick to move this putter head off of the table so I don't burn myself. Here, put that over there. Okay. Keep getting phone calls. Hold on. Are we live anymore? I don't know if we're still live. Okay, hopefully you're still there. I'm back if you are. I don't know if I'm still live. Well, it says I'm still live. I'm going to keep talking. Shoot. Well, we'll have to figure out. Hopefully I'm still live. All right, I'm going to keep going. Okay, so basically what I wanted to show you was this is the part of, come on. Is anybody there?